My favorite line in Ace Attorney Investigations is when you're in the airplane and you examine the flight attendant's change room. Miles Edgeworth has a line of dialogue where he goes, "I have absolutely no interest in what goes on in there."
I remember this, yeah.
And I was like, it's confirmed. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Rhythm Encounter, RPG Fans Music Podcast. I am Jonathan Logan, and you might know me as one of the hosts of Random Encounter, but today I'm going to be branching out a little bit. I'm going to be diving into the music of one of my all-time favorite game series, Ace Attorney. You may have heard that recently a brand new installment of the Ace Attorney series, The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, came out, and it's a compilation of two games, The Great Ace Attorney and The Great Ace Attorney 2, and they are both prequels that take place in the 19th century and star Phoenix Wright's ancestor. So I wrote a review for them. They are absolutely wonderful games. I highly recommend them, especially if you like Ace Attorney. They're a great jumping on point. If you have anyone in your life that you've been bugging about playing Ace Attorney, but they're like, it's 6 games. You can be like, no, it's just this one. And don't tell them it's 2. Just tell them it's 1. And then the first one will suck them in and they'll have to play the second one to get all the answers they need. Anyway, known as Gyakuten Saiban in Japan, this is a long-running adventure game series that features over-the-top court battles. It features investigations, a ton of colorful defendants, witnesses, and prosecutors. And frankly, it has some absolutely remarkable music that elevates the entire experience. Otherwise, it would be a pretty engaging story, but with the music, it really elevates it to something truly epic and occasionally heartbreaking. But before we get into the music of Ace Attorney, I just want to introduce my co-counsels today. Making a return appearance on Rhythm is RPG Fans music editor Patrick Gann.
Hey, everybody.
And making her very first appearance on Rhythm Encounter, one of my ridiculously talented review editors, Niki Fakhoori.
Hello.
Yes, so we're here to speak about the Ace Attorney series. I am extremely disturbed to say that it is 20 years old, having first come out on the Game Boy Advance in Japan in October of 2001. Now, we didn't get it until a few years later in a series of, remasters. But since then, we've had 5 more titles in the mainline series. We've had 2 spin-off titles starring series favorite Miles Edgeworth, only one of which is available in the West, officially. We've had a crossover game with Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton. We've had a very underrated movie, which is it's a spectacular adaptation of Ace Attorney, and we have had an anime that's lasted 3 seasons, which has some mixed reviews, but if you don't want to play the game, but you still want to get some of that Ace Attorney flavor, really, really good news. Just watch it. And of course, then we have The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, which came out on July 27th, 2021. Now, before we get started with really listening to the songs, I really wanted to ask you a little bit about your experiences with the games, where you're coming from, why you love them, why you love the music. So, Patrick, would you like to tell us what you think?
I remember, this is my first memory of the Gyakuten Saiban series, and...
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. You just made my pronunciation look terrible.
It's all right. I only say it because the first game to come to America was the DS version of the first game, which was just the original game, plus they added a bonus case, and that bonus case was Yomigaeru Gyakuten, or like...
Rise from the Ashes.
Yes, yeah, the rebirth scenario. And I remember I bought the Gyakuten Saiban Yomigaeru Gyakuten soundtrack, which came with the best bonus I've ever gotten with the soundtrack. It was a towel. It was a towel with the Gyakuten Saiban logo in it, and on the other side, the outline of Phoenix Wright pointing in the big, like, bubbly Japanese text that says "Objection," essentially, and it was like a towel that you could use to wipe sweat off if you were sweating profusely.
As if you were on the stand, yes.
Yeah, it was the funniest thing in the world. I lost my mind. I had no idea it was coming as a bonus. This would have been like 2005 or 2006. And that was my initial exposure to the whole franchise, was buying that soundtrack. Afterwards, I went on and collected most of the OSTs, and I've played, I think, the first 5 main games, and as well as the Miles Edgeworth game, the one that made it officially to America. So I'm also a huge fan of Noriyuki Iwadare, whom I'm sure we'll be discussing more about in detail. He did not start with the series, but he came on for the third game and then has been sort of on and off as one of the main composers for the series, and also does most of the arrangements for the really good Arrange albums.
Of which there are many.
Like, so many I can't keep up. And I'm proud and a little bit boastful about the fact that I had opportunity to meet Iwadare-san back in 2012, I think, when a whole bunch of Japanese composers came out for a video game orchestra performance in Boston. And among the games that we had conversation with Iwadare about, and I think this interview is on RPG Fan, we talked a lot about Lunar and Grandia for many reasons, but we also, among other things, talked about the Ace Attorney series. And, the big piece was transitioning from 1 and 2 to 3, and him sort of both reestablishing some of the important main themes and then putting his own spin on things, because he sort of did take a central role from the third game onward.
Niki, why don't you tell us your experience with Ace Attorney and the music?
Well, my first experience was actually more about the art. I was a tiny little obnoxious kid who thought, hey, I can do things, and that includes teach myself Japanese. And this is a cool looking game with some dashing fellows, and look, it's in Japanese. So I played the first case of the first Gyakuten Saiban game, all in Japanese, all by myself. And I said, wow, I'm cool. But it was a lot of reading, so it gave me a headache. So I didn't get to appreciate the music as much because I was looking through a lot of kanji dictionaries.
I don't blame you.
But then, it came out on the DS, like we said. And I was like, I remember this. This time I might not get a headache. Let's get it. And I've loved it ever since. The characters are great. The music is always great, just like the characters. The visuals are great. Everything's great. And it's very great.
I 100% agree with you. My first experience on it was like you, and not like you actually. I did not play the original game in Japanese. I played it on my DS, and I've been a huge adventure game fan my entire life, and I just kind of wanted to play an adventure game. So I was doing a little research. I found this sounds like an interesting title, and got it, put it into my DS, and I think I played all of it in like a day or maybe 2 days. It was the weekend. Like, I just absorbed it. I loved it so much. It was such a wonderful mix of absurdity and heartbreak and tragedy and some amazing music and just really, really memorable characters. It's funny. I mean, it's a little surprised that I'm such a huge Yakuza fan, because I feel like, not just because they're Japanese, but it shares a lot of the same DNA of mixing together the absurd and the tragic and melodrama, just switching between them on the fly effortlessly. And of course, over the top characters and ridiculous costumes and all that as well, and some amazing music. So yeah, I've been playing it since 2 years ago. I imported a copy of The Great Ace Attorney from Japan, and there was a translation patch that a fan translation group released, and I played the game, and I reviewed it for the site. Actually, we didn't mark the story because we didn't feel that it was fair to Capcom to grade them on the story, since it was not them that handled the translation. But my impression was very favorable. I really, really enjoyed the game. That's my experience with the game. So why don't we take a dive into some of the music right off the bat? So I've taken our picks, and I've divided them into 3 different sections. And we're gonna give them a listen, and we're going to give you our thoughts on the songs and what we think they do in the game and why they're great. So our first song to take a look at is going to be in a block entitled "Detective of Different Decades," because I like the alliteration. So the first one is Dick Gumshoe, that's Detective Gumshoe, pal, composed by Masakazu Sugimori. It's from the Gyakuten Saiban 1+2 OST. And this is the one you have, you said? No, I have it now. I bought it from you.
You bought the whole trilogy box from me, which was it's the original. I think the trilogy box is like the DS upgrade music, 1 and 2 would have been Game Boy Advance source audio.
Okay.
So this is the original audio source, what we're going to hear.
And I'm glad that we have that, because it's always nice to have a little bit of boops and beeps.
Yep.
And the other song we're going to be listening to is a little bit newer. It's my choice, and it's going to be Sherlock Holmes, The Great Detective of Foggy Town. And that's going to be composed by Yasumasa Kitagawa, and it's from the Great Ace Attorney soundtrack. So we're going to give a listen to these two detective tracks, and then we'll be back and tell you what we think.
Oh man, so those are two fantastic songs that we just heard. I'm going to start with my pick.
Please.
Y'all heard my boy Dick Gumshoe, an interesting support character that sort of lasts throughout like the timeline of like the Phoenix Wright era. I think he exists as a detective or somewhere in law enforcement throughout games 4, 5, and 6 as well.
We never see him though. He's in 1, 2, and 3, and he makes a cameo appearance in the flashback case of Apollo Justice.
That's right. For me, what's interesting about his theme song, and I think I had said this to you guys outside of the podcast prior, I don't know what it is, but this song to me captures so much of what's like good and catchy about like the courtroom drama tracks, but it's uplifting and upbeat. When I had heard this song playing through the first game, I had mistakenly thought it was either the theme song for the game or the theme song for Phoenix Wright himself.
Oh.
And only like after like finding a tracklist translation of the soundtrack did I realize, oh, this is Gumshoe's theme, not Phoenix Wright's theme. It's so ubiquitous. You get to hear it sort of prominently at the beginning and end of each case because you end up interfacing with Gumshoe, and then you probably run into him at least once during the investigation periods as well. So, it's an incredibly catchy little melody. It sounds so good. Like that B part where it's like dun 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 dun. Like, come on. Like, to me, as far as the original trilogy goes, and especially the first game, like that is easily my favorite piece of music. It even beats like all of the courtroom themes, like Allegro and the Objection music. Like all of the courtroom stuff is great, but like to me, I will say this as a character, I don't think Gumshoe deserves such a darn good track.
Gumshoe deserves the world. How could you say this?
He at least deserves a higher salary.
That's probably true.
This is the salary cut theme, yeah.
This is the salary cut theme. Yeah, there's some sort of deeper meaning behind why Gumshoe gets such a good piece of music.
They feel bad because he can't even afford noodles, but they give him a great B section in the song.
Yeah, you can't afford. And then, compare and contrast that with John, you were the one who picked this track from Great Ace Attorney, right?
Yeah, I was. I mean, they're two very different detectives.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, I think about that a lot, is not only are they different in terms of character traits and competency, arguably, but of course you got to think about what were the tools of the trade available in the 19th century versus the early 21st century.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes had his magnifying glass, and he had all of his science and technology and everything, and Dick Gumshoe had missile.
Yay!
That's right. So yeah, it's appropriately different, and what I like about it is the one thing that you could say in terms of similarity is that they're both heavily melodically driven, which I think is probably true of most of the character themes in this series, which isn't true of all character themes across all video games. Sometimes character themes turn out into be melodically weak little drone fests.
Occasionally.
Yeah, which occasionally is also the right thing to do depending on the nature of the game. But I think among the character themes in Great Ace Attorney, at least the first soundtrack, because I think the second game had a separate soundtrack.
It did, but there's a lot of the music is the same.
Yeah, a lot of repeat. Yeah, I think as far as the character themes go, I almost want to say, and I haven't listened to the whole OST with a good focus, but among the Great Ace Attorney tracks, this detective theme is fairly strong among the characters of that generation, which also fits with, the original Phoenix Wright trilogy's character themes, because, yeah, the Faye sisters have good music, and, Edgeworth has a good theme and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, Gumshoe's theme was it, and I really, really dig this new, but also older Great Ace Attorney's detective theme.
Yeah. Nikki, what do you think about, I mean, I know you're a fan of Dick Gumshoe, seeing as you want him to have all of the salary and all of the noodles.
Oh my goodness. So I guess in some interesting ways, I kind of feel the opposite, where I do love Gumshoe's music theme, and I love him, but his music always sounded so sad to me. Like every time I listen to it, I feel like he's just gonna be like, surprised someone else died, like in the case that's completely unrelated to this. I wouldn't even be surprised. It just sounds so sad to me. There's just something about the like, it's catchy. It has that kind of like catchiness to it that fits his own like jovial personality, but the music itself just sounds so sad to me. Is it because of the salary cuts? Is it because they're murder cases? Could be both. Who knows? I've always just, I hear it and I'm like, it's sad time. Yay. That's kind of just how I've always felt with his.
Niki, is it all right if I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
It's just a music theory piece. I had focused really a lot on the B side of Gumshoe's theme, the second part with the upbeat sort of do 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 do. But the sort of A part of the song is all in a minor key, like the whole chord progression and that bass line, doom doom doodle doom doom doom, like that whole section is fairly sort of dark and rough, and I kind of want to say it's got that like 5 o'clock shadow in musical form, which is like Gumshoe's face always.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like, I have a very upbeat take on it, but maybe it's just because I tend to focus on the second part of the song, and when the song always starts playing in the game, what do you hear first? Well, the first part. And I feel like your perspective there is really valuable.
But I think it's really cool too, because that kind of encompasses how Ace Attorney is as a whole, though, in which I think it's probably the most effective game I've ever played, the most effective series I've ever played, that is able to make the stakes feel legitimate, make you feel legitimate pain and sorrow when things happen to these characters, but it is effective when they try to do comedy too. It's a great, experience with all sorts of emotions, and that's kind of how this is, right?
I mean, Dick Gumshoe as a character is the human equivalent of a big, dumb, lovable Saint Bernard dog who will growl at anyone who comes near him that doesn't know him, but he'll just be a complete and utter, I don't want to say slobbering, because he'd be slobbering all over Edgeworth, which technically, yes. See, I'm actually coming at it kind of midway between the two of you, because I feel like, well, first off, the beginning of the song, it's very police. It's very 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very divided, and it's very dark and almost unfriendly, which is very much like what happens when you approach Gumshoe at a crime scene as Phoenix. It's a, hey, pal, get away from there. We don't want you here. We're the police. And then as the song continues, it starts to get a little bit more upbeat and fun and friendly, which is kind of like Phoenix's relationship with Gumshoe as it evolves throughout the game. It started out vaguely antagonistic, and then it became more a competitive, friendly kind of thing between the two of them when they're on the crime scene. I think that says a lot about the character and the progression the character goes through in the first game, and obviously through the rest of them as well. It's
even indicative of how he is with Edgeworth, because at first you think, oh, it's just, business for him, but then at the fourth case, the original final case before the remakes, it's like, hey pal, Edgeworth's a great guy, yep, and he's really good to me, even though he's always cutting my salary. You gotta help him. Mm-hmm. Like, you're the only one who can, and he deserves that help because he's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, that relationship is even more developed in the Ace Attorney Investigations series, which I am a really big fan of. The way I've always looked at it is that Detective Gumshoe not only sees Edgeworth as his superior, I think he sees Edgeworth as his best friend. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly Edgeworth does not feel this way, but I like that interpretation, that he thinks that Edgeworth is his best friend and he would do anything for him. Absolutely. Including lending missile to a hapless defense attorney. True. Yeah, and I've always found it interesting that when I have heard orchestral arrangements of this, there's usually a lot of, it's on horn a lot of the time, and it's very, I don't know, I just feel like that creates a completely different feel to the song that isn't in this version of it. True, yeah. And on the other hand, we have Sherlock Holmes, the great detective of Foggy Town, which would be London. Oh, yeah. And this is obviously a very, very different detective than Detective Gumshoe. Very different relationship. I know you haven't played the game yet, but Holmes isn't a detective in the same style of Dick Gumshoe or Emma Skye.
he's not with the police at all. That role is filled by different characters in The Great Ace Attorney. Tobias Gregson, which is a great character and is probably the subject of my new favorite GIF, which I will send to you, Nikki, because I have a feeling you'll like it. But the relationship is he's a main character in the story, and you become very close to him. And unlike Sherlock Holmes is occasionally a bit of a buffoon. His deductions are almost always very close, but not quite on the mark. The way they develop this character in the games is very, very interesting because they're trying to keep they really walk the balance between him being a complete and utter idiot and being a complete and utter genius. And I feel like he's, unlike the Sherlock Holmes, the dour, that kind of character. This one is exuberant. He is laughing constantly at himself, at everything around him. And he's a very adventurous, unrestrained character. And I feel that this song perfectly encapsulates that unrestrained nature in the tango. I mean, there's obviously the violin is a reference to Sherlock Holmes himself, and the violin is in the game as well. It plays a peripheral role in one of the cases. But yeah, it has, let's see here, there's castanets in it. You can hear castanets. Mm-hmm. There's a harpsichord the instrumentation of the piece is very much of its time, which is something I think that they did with the game in general, where every theme in the game sounds very period appropriate in terms of the instrumentation, if not necessarily in the style of the music. And I love I just really, really love this track. It was I mentioned it specifically when I reviewed the translation of the first game. I just love the call and response nature of the early part of the song, and I feel like that's a reference to there's a gameplay mechanic in this where Sherlock will make deductions on a crime scene, and he'll try to figure out exactly what happened, and he is very close to the mark but not quite there, so you have to step in and correct his deductions, and it's going very back and forth, like call and response, which I feel is kind of what happens with the violin and then the response with the accordion.
Yeah, I think, you've put together a really good assessment of what is happening musically, and probably intentionally by the composer, between what happens musically for this character and then when you play the game and interact with this character, what are those interactions looking like?
Yeah, and I think that's a key part of most great Ace Attorney themes, not great Ace Attorney, most fantastic Ace Attorney character themes, is that even if you have only a periphery knowledge of the characters, if you hear a theme, it should instantly make you think, oh, there's that character.
Yes.
And I feel like this, clearly, I don't think that any other character in this game deserves a song like this. Like, this is very clearly Sherlock Holmes. I know that neither of you have played it, but what do you think of the song?
The notes I put down involve how there's that grandiose feel, but the whimsy in there basically clues you in that he's like the great detective.
Haha, clues you in.
You get it? But
yes,
just like Gumshoe, his head is empty, single brain cell, and we are here to stand. We respect it. We respect the hustle. We stand those head empty lads. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Those are better words than I can give to it, but I think, again, as far as character themes go, I generally respect the strength of the musical theme itself. And having heard your explanation, Jonathan, I think you're probably pretty well onto what the composer was going for, and I think it's a song that's worthy of a good character, a recurring support character that has this sort of I can't quite put my finger on it kind of vibe. Like, he's almost there, or maybe he thinks he's there, but he's always like 2 steps off.
Yeah.
The music gives that as well, because it's grandiose, but it's also a little zany at points, and lighthearted, and the music's tipping you off to the fact that, like, all right, there's a lot of like presumptuousness, and maybe there is a lot of greatness behind this man, but he's he's got a few loose screws, so to speak.
He doesn't finish the Objection theme either, because he has the bump 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 bump, but it doesn't finish.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You're
it
right.
Doesn't ever go anywhere.
Doesn't have bump 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 at the end like the Objection theme should.
Right.
I'm very impressed with how they wrote Sherlock Holmes. Well, it's Sherlock Holmes. It's supposed to be Sherlock Holmes. I'm very impressed with the way they handle the character in this game, because there are many, many interpretations of Sherlock Holmes, and I think they have really come up with a unique one here. And part of that's the music. And I mean, the music in the whole game is, we'll be listening to a little bit more music in the game a little later, but I will say to music fans out there, and Patrick, specifically to you, I feel, would very much enjoy this. One of the extras in this, in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, is there's a music player, which is fine. Lots of games have a music player. But this one includes unreleased and alternative themes and songs of the characters, like completely different versions that were never used in the game. And it actually gives like liner notes about why this didn't work or why this one works better. And I think that sounds like something you'd like.
Yeah, it is something I would like. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, so first thing you're going to do is dive into the extras. So yeah, does anyone else have any more thoughts about these two songs, or should we move on to the next block?
I'm excited for the next block.
Woohoo.
Yeah, I'm excited for the next block too. I will say that in nowhere in this, until maybe the end, will you hear any of the big, well, pursuit for one thing, which is a recurring theme in all of the Ace Attorney games, possibly because I stole them all and did I did a Ace Attorney trilogy suite in the adventure game episode, so we're not allowed to pick any of those for this one. And I apologize to both of you for that. When I picked that song, I was not aware that we were going to be doing this episode. So unfortunately, those songs are not going to be heard. But if you do want to listen to them, just listen to the adventure game episode and you will enjoy a wonderful interpretation of the courtroom scenes. So let's move on to the next block, which I am calling the DS era. So both of these games come from Ace Attorney DS games, not remakes. These ones were specifically made for the DS. So the first one we're going to be listening to is Niki's pick. We're going to be listening to Questioning, Allegro 2007, composed by Toshihiko Horiyama. And it's going to be from the Apollo Justice Ace Attorney soundtrack. And the second song in this is, again, mine. My pick is A Defense Attorney's Knowledge. It's composed by Noriyuki Iwadare, and it's arranged by Iwadare and Natsumi Kameoka. And it's from Ace Attorney Investigations 2 Orchestral Arrangement Collection. So we're going to give a listen to these two songs, and we are going to come back and give you our thoughts on them.
Amazing. Wow, time to cry. Here come all the emotions. Yeah, that's Ace Attorney. So, I picked Questioning Allegro 2007 to basically cheat the system because I wanted to pick Perceived Surging Eyes, which is the theme that plays when Apollo has a look, like with the eye emojis, and he looks at people and is like, "Oh, I see. You also have a skull on your hand. Interesting." And what I found so interesting about that was that it is a slowed down version of the questioning theme from the Apollo Justice game on the Nintendo DS. But when he reappears in the subsequent games on the 3DS, they just keep that song without changing it. Like, it's just exactly the same. It's not rearranged or anything. So that kind of like the cross-examination questioning theme is kind of like just inherently associated with Apollo. And Apollo is my son, and I love him, and he deserves the world, just like Gumshoe. So I went with this because, wow, what a great song. It's mysterious. It has some kind of like supernatural flair to it because that's exactly what Apollo has. The part right before it loops, where it's just like da 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 dun da da dun. It's like, listen, you're almost there. And you know what? After you do a few more questionings and pressings and objectionings, you're gonna do it, and you're gonna win the game, and you're gonna cry because, you know, this is a sad game, and yeah, that's the whole point, is that you have to cry. And that's great. So I love it. And you know what else is sad? That one that you picked. Because I haven't played Investigations 2 yet. Keyword yet. But listen, even I can tell this is a sad dad theme. They're all gotta be sad dad themes. I'm crying. It's just sad. Everything's crying. That's the whole series. That's it. That's my feelings.
It's crying and I don't know, writing Edgeworth Phoenix / fiction.
That's fine. You know, it's fine because it's very good. See, we have to have the happy dads to balance out the sad dads.
I agree with you. I think this is a very, very, very good cross-examination theme. It's actually one of my favorites in the series. As listeners, if you know Ace Attorney, almost every Ace Attorney game has a suite of courtroom themes that usually begins courtroom lounge, then court begins, then there's a cross-examination moderato, then there's occasionally a logic section, then there's another cross-examination, but that's Allegro, so it gets a little quicker. Then there's a confess the truth usually, and then you get a pursuit. And those are pretty much in every single game. Now, every single song is different, but they all have kind of a similar feel, and I think that this one is a particularly good example of what this is supposed to do. And also, I think it's a great example of just how much the music has evolved since the Game Boy Advance games, because although the Game Boy Advance, the music got an upgrade when they did the DS remake / remasters, this is the first game which had all music written specifically for the DS, and the DS, the Game Boy Advance didn't have its own sound chip. It did everything on the CPU, whereas the DS itself had a dedicated sound chip, and I think you can really hear the quality of the music and how much it's improved just alongside the graphics, really.
Oh yeah. And I mean, the thing is that the series as a whole has always just had such strong composing that they're all very good. Like, for the earlier titles, they definitely worked with their limitations to make really good pieces. But listen, I gotta rep my child, the, sunshine of my life, Apollo Justice.
I love Apollo. I think he's a great character.
He's so good that, everything, it's like, I didn't come up with this, but I have seen this whispered on the internet.com where other cross-examination themes are like really encouraging you to like get to the end and figure out the truth, but this one kind of sounds like if you figure out the truth, you're really not going to be happy that you did, but you kind of have to.
I agree. There's an almost ominous feel to Apollo Justice Ace Attorney that isn't really present in the first 3 games. And that's not a criticism. It's a really smart shift of tone that they did to differentiate and introduce this brand new character.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Apollo Justice is a great character, and I think that his story from Apollo Justice Ace Attorney all the way to Spirit of Justice is really, really well done.
Oh, yeah.
What are you feeling, Patrick?
Well, it's interesting. Among all of the Courtroom suites, if you take the suite from start to finish, I think for me Apollo Justice is probably one of my least favorite on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to isolate just the Allegro portion of cross-examination, not the Moderato, but the Allegro.
It's funny because the Moderato version doesn't do anything for me.
Exactly. So you take just the Allegros across the series. I'm especially thinking of like 1 through 6. I really think I had thought, coming out of playing and experiencing the original trilogy and knowing the soundtracks, the music to the original trilogy very well, when I first really digested the soundtrack to Apollo Justice and then played Apollo Justice, especially in the Courtroom, I felt musically it was kind of weak. But man, this Allegro track, and also its slowed down version, which you pointed out rightfully, Nikki, for the eyes thing.
Perceive. Surging eyes.
For those who haven't played the game, he has a, very much like Psylocke and things like that, he has a ability to perceive very, very small physical movements on witnesses using his bracelet.
Yeah. He notices little nervous ticks and things and then comes to epic conclusions from them. But it's he drags the truth out via the cross-examination. He might have a hint at what it is, but he needs to get the witness to say it, which is really neat. But so I think that's one of the things that the music hits that also fits the game. I can't remember which of you said it, but this is when you go after the truth, specifically in the 4th game in Apollo Justice, you might not like what you're going to find, but you need to find it anyway. Because the truth is its own good, whether it's a happy thing or not.
That's something that's been building in the last few entries that wasn't really in the first one. In the first one, you were always looking for the truth. But in the last few games, especially in the Great Ace Attorney, and I think the turn was with Apollo Justice, the idea that you're still seeking the truth, but it might not be a truth you want to hear. It's a truth that's going to hold a lot of pain for a lot of people, including you maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And yeah, I think it might have started with Apollo Justice. The Allegro theme is it's driving towards something important, and it's not intense, and it's mostly major key for youth music theory kids. It's exciting, but it's almost kind of overwhelming. And the music tends to overwhelm me to the point where I think I got the most, when I think through all the times or all the games I've played in the series, I think I got the most game overs in Apollo Justice. And I'll admit, I'm not great at problem solving.
Okay,
so.
To be fair to you, Patrick, and I do love Apollo Justice, but it does have some of the worst cases of moon logic in the series.
That's true, too. And I appreciate you giving me that out. But I think it also was this, when I would hear this song, I'd get a little flighty because it was oh my gosh. Yeah, the music, I think there was a risk. I remember thinking it in my head, they've made this epic trilogy. Now they're trying something with Apollo Justice. The series could have died then and there. I truly thought to myself, if this doesn't work, this could be it. It wasn't an enormous hit at the time, right? They were really just sort of striking out, and not in the baseball way, but striking out new territory.
Yeah.
And musically, I think songs like this and a couple of character themes were what really carried the soundtrack for Apollo Justice. And so I'm really glad, Nikki, that you selected the Allegro piece from the Courtroom suite, because I think it is the strongest part of Apollo Justice's Courtroom music.
It's so good.
And also, something that it does, and I mean, this is what a good cross-examination is supposed to do, it might have one of the best builds into the pursuit theme of all of the questioning, the dun 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 da da da.
Oh, that's very true.
And it leads right into the pursuit theme, and it really drives towards that. It's a really nice climactic moment.
Yeah, it's cohesive in that sense. I I think it might be more cohesive than maybe anything from the original trilogy. Certainly more than 2 and 3. The first game is a very cohesive courtroom suite.
Yeah.
But yeah, Apologistus is very cohesive in that sense. Good call. What was the other one we were listening to? That beautiful orchestral arrangement of
Sad Dad.
Of Sad Dad.
Yep, that's what it's called. It's called Sad Dad. Yep, that's mine. It's called A Defense Attorney's Knowledge, and it is in Ace Attorney Investigations 2. Now, if there anyone out there who has not played the Ace Attorney Investigations series, it's a spin-off of Ace Attorney, obviously, starring Miles Edgeworth, the prosecutor. And I know the first game is available on iOS, and it's a bit of a departure for the series because unlike the other ones, this one looks a little bit more like a traditional point-and-click adventure game. Like, you actually see the character, and you can move the character around the crime scene. But it plays almost identically to the Ace Attorney games. There's no courtroom drama. It's entirely crime scene based, and it's Miles Edgeworth making deductions. The first one is great. I think the second one is even better, but like we said, it's not available here officially, but many of the same folks who did the translation for The Great Ace Attorney also did a fan translation of Ace Attorney Investigations 2. And it is a very strong piece of work, I think, from them. This song, I'm not going to ruin anything about the plot of that game, but there is a section of it where you do a bit of a flashback, and you go back to see, you play as Gregory Edgeworth, who is Miles Edgeworth's dad. And unlike Miles Edgeworth, Gregory Edgeworth is a defense attorney. When I was picking my songs, my first thought was, well, I'm just going to pick Great Revival, because it's Great Revival. It's one of the most iconic pieces of music from the series. It's Miles Edgeworth's theme. It's big, it's grand. And then I was looking around and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give a little bit of a curveball here. I'm going to pick A Defense Attorney's Knowledge because it has a lot of similarities with Great Revival. It has, like, some of the melody is very, very similar. It sounds a little bit like it. Like, if you're not paying attention, it does a lot of the same things. But it is, I feel, almost more triumphant. It's more heroic. It's a heroic theme that fits that of a defense attorney in this game. But at the same time, it's a defense attorney who is much more analytical than Phoenix or Apollo, or it's very analytical, like Miles Edgeworth. They both think. So when I first heard it, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be the song I want to pick. And there is the version in game. This is from the orchestral arrangement, and there's a reason for that, and that's the little B section in it, because I feel that the first part is a perfect character theme. It says everything you need to know about the character. Neither of you have played it, but I mean, if you listen to it, I'm pretty sure you can figure out who Gregory Edgeworth is. The B section, I think, really does reflect the tragedy of Gregory Edgeworth and Miles. And like, if you've played the first game, you know what happens to Gregory Edgeworth, but he was always like a specter behind Miles. Like, the ghost of his father was always behind him. And one of the reasons I think this is such a good game is because they took that specter that was always behind him and they made him into the fantastic character who you always hoped he would be. And yeah, I think it's a very, very strong, I think it's a strong character theme and a very strong game. And and like most of the Ace Attorney soundtracks, like, there are shades of this character theme within the Ace Attorney Investigations 2 Pursuit theme, which you can hear, and that's just another little touch to it. But what do you two think about the song?
I must say, this is like my whole pedigree speech, and I do this when I run into the names like the ones I see here. Iwadare has played a really crucial role in composition for the series. I especially like his first bits of work for the series. He did the third Phoenix Wright game. I think it was called Trials and Tribulations in America.
It was.
That soundtrack is fantastic. He nails it.
It's actually that's my favorite Pursuit theme in the entire series.
Yeah. And his work on future titles, including the Ace Attorney Investigations, like the Edgeworth stuff, is also really solid. Iwadare is just a huge inspiration, veteran composer. A lot of other composers, a lot of younger composers openly admit to admiring his work and looking up to him. So in one sense, I'm just happy to see him still active, and on the other hand, it's a hard piece to listen to musically. Not in a bad way. It's a great piece of music, but it is hard when you listen to something that's sort of tugging at the heartstrings. And to that end, I would also mention Natsumi Kameoka is, if anyone listens to video game orchestral music, there's almost no way you haven't heard Kameoka. She and Sachiko Miyano have dominated the landscape. They're like, between the two of them, they're probably somewhere between 60 and 80% of like all Japanese orchestrated music of the last decade. That, I don't think I'm overselling it. Like, they've done almost everything for Square Enix in the last decade. They've done almost everything for Capcom in the last decade. I think they dipped their toes into some Atlas stuff at one point, some Persona stuff. Like, they have just done so much incredible orchestration. They're workhorses. I do feel like from time to time they've had to phone it in because of how heavily they've been leaned upon in the last decade. But yeah, Natsumi Kameoka and Sachiko Miyano do really incredible work of pulling a piece of music that might have maybe 4 or 5 distinct parts in terms of melody, counter melody, harmony, rhythm, and filling it out for a full orchestra. It's not easy work, and left to his own devices, you could imagine Iwadare would have burnt out on this particular orchestral recording. So I'm glad he had Kameoka, co-arranging on this, and I think other orchestral albums. There have been a few that I think Iwadare wasn't left solo on, though I think he did do the jazz and the first orchestral solo. I'd have to fact check myself on that. But yeah, the two of them together, did do a great job on this particular album, and specifically on this track. The soundtrack itself, which that was 3DS, I think. Am I correct? It was, the OST was for a 3DS title.
Sorry, what was?
Ace Attorney Investigations 2. That was 3DS, right?
Nope. It was two. It was the
original
DS. It was the DS.
My bad.
I almost said the 2DS.
Yes.
It's the one that's 2D.
It was on the 2DS. Yeah, that was a thing.
No, it was not. It's a regular old DS game.
Oh man, it must have been one of the last ones, though.
It was. It's probably one of the reasons it was never released here.
I think you're right about that. But yeah, it sounds great in its OST form, but the orchestral arrangement was significantly improved, to the point where sometimes I kind of wish these orchestral arrangements, like, they just put all the games on Switch or something and let you switch out between like the sequenced OST music and like a looped orchestrated version. I'd pay for that.
I would put money that there are probably patches online for like
swapped
for like Ace Attorney ROMs and things like that will do that.
Yeah, I'm sure that exists. I've seen that sort of stuff for other games. That's a good point.
I know that there's a lot of Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past ones that use orchestral soundtracks.
Yeah, they'll pull in like the Twilight Princess orchestral album and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for picking this song, John, and Iwadare and Kameoka for doing incredible work, because these characters really come to life with a good piece of music, and this song makes me all the more want to get around to playing one of the few games in the series I haven't touched yet, even if I have to do it through a fan translation. I don't even know if I should call it a fan translation. I mean, these people are professionals.
The amount of work that is required to localize an Ace Attorney game is not insubstantial, and they did a remarkable job, and not just in terms of like providing a playable game, but also capturing a lot of the charm that's included within a official Capcom translated Ace Attorney game, because they're very special, and I feel that they really captured that spirit with both the translations of Ace Attorney Investigations 2 and their version of the Great Ace Attorney. Anyway, Niki, what do you think of the song?
Wow. So yeah, in the middle, I start crying because it starts getting really sad, and I'm like, oh no, it's happening. And you know what? That's okay, because in the end, what is a defense attorney's knowledge? It's that you have to believe that your client is innocent if they say so. And what did he do at the end of the first game? He was like, listen, it's gotta be Yogi. It couldn't have been my boy. And that's why I cry every day thinking about Ace Attorney. Oh my gosh. And then it's just like, oh snap, you hear just a little bit of Edgeworth's theme because he's the dad. Oh my gosh. And then you just cry more. And then you're like, wow, every day, a new day to be sad. And that's how I feel.
That is a very good summation of what a defense attorney's knowledge is.
Dang, Niki. Dang.
Yeah. There are so many little pieces of this that I agree with you. It's not just the the violin in the middle. There's the chimes that are midway through that kind of make everything seem like a memory.
Yes.
Because it is a memory in the game.
Because he's gone. Wow. Every day I suffer more.
Yeah, I think that it's such a tricky balance whenever you do a prequel. This isn't a prequel, but it's a prequel. The case itself is a prequel. But when you go back and you explore a character that's been dead for a long time, that you only get to see little pieces of, it's tricky, and because you've built up your own image of what this character should be. And I think that they really did a good job with Gregory Edgeworth, not just in the song, but in the character. And the look of him in the game, he's wearing a fedora, and he has a trench coat. He looks like a classic. He looks like a classic film noir detective, except that he's wearing a pair of glasses too, and just a really strong interpretation, to the point where I kind of wonder what Miles Edgeworth's costume would look like if Gregory Edgeworth raised him.
But he gets the glasses in the 3DS games, don't you see? We're all here, we are all crying, and we are all seeing the character development, the build-up. This is what we are here for. I'm going to yell.
I'm not sure it's so much character development as it is ocular degeneration, but
it's
yes.
It's fine, because he's dad now. He became dad. He married Phoenix. They adopted Trucy. Now he is dad. He has to wear the glasses like that. And you know why? This is how we know that this was intentional, because in the same game, in the first 3DS game, the one that introduced Athena, thank you, by the way, for doing that, that's the same game where Apollo does the whole evidence is everything in court and does the same pose as his own mentor. Oh, you see, we got him. Bada bing, bada boom. We are all crying in this room.
I would love to have a conversation. This isn't the forum for it, because it's Rhythm Encounter.
I'm sorry?
No, it's not. No, I would love to have a conversation talking about characters in this game which are, if not explicitly queer-coded, at the very least, it really, I think obviously Miles Edgeworth is, in my mind, Miles Edgeworth is gay. That's my interpretation of it. I think that Apollo also is, if not gay, is queer, based on his relationship and how he reacted to the death of his best friend Clay Taryn in the fifth game. And I think that I wish that, obviously there are different cultures and things like that, but I wish that the Ace Attorney games would lean into that a little bit more and make it explicit. So Jean Armstrong is not the only actual gay representation in the Ace Attorney games.
Yeah, well, like you said, this isn't necessarily the place for it, but there have been, interviews done where it's made pretty clear that they are at least trying as much as they can with Phoenix and Edgeworth. And there's a lot of backstory behind that. And maybe someday we'll talk about that. But anyways, they're married, they adopted Trucy, and now Edgeworth wears glasses like his dad, and I cried. That's it. That's the story.
And that's canon.
You're right.
Amen.
All right. Well, with that happy ending, we're going to move on now to the third block of songs, which I call the Spirit of Justice, because both of the songs are from Spirit of Justice. And this block, it's Niki and Patrick's picks. So, let's take a look at the songs. So the first one is going to be Niki's, and it is
Uendo Tornado.
Can you give me that again? Because that was just
Uendo
golden.
Tornado, Whirlwind of Laughter.
Yes, or the Laughing Typhoon.
Right.
It's composed by Masami Onodera, and the second song that we are doing is very well known if you've played the first Ace Attorney game, specifically the new case, Rise from the Ashes. It is Emma Sky's theme, Forensic Scientist 2016. It is composed by Iwadare and also Horiyama, and it is arranged by Iwadare as well. And this is from the Ace Attorney 15th Anniversary Symphonic Orchestra concert. It's not its own song; it's inside one of the tracks. But yeah, so both of these tunes are from Spirit of Justice, and we're going to give it a listen to them, and then we'll be right back to give you some thoughts.
Wow. Am I the only person who likes Spirit of Justice? Maybe not. Am I the only person that Spirit of Justice is my favorite game in the series? Probably. Am I the only person who likes turnabout storytellers? Very probably. Am I the only person who loves the character Uendo Tornado? Absolutely not. Everyone should love them. So, wow, this song is so good. It's actually very appropriately Japanese. It is not appropriated. It's actually thematic. It's great. It fits the characters' animations so well, especially when they start flapping the fan with the little confetti. Oh my gosh, it's like this music was made for that animation. I cry, you cry, we all cry. Also, according to theinternet.com, apparently, there's no more than 4 instruments playing at a time in this piece, which, if it is true, I don't know how to count, but if it is true, that's pretty cool if you know anything about this character.
Very clever.
Which if you do, that means you love them. If you don't, that means you need to play Spirit of Justice. Don't listen to the people who say it's bad. Listen to me, because I say it's great. Yeah, and then what do we have? We have Emma Sky. You know who she is? Scientist. We all love her. She's great. She's in Spirit of Justice. Hell yeah. And this version of the theme that we picked is from Spirit of Justice, and it's so much more lively than I remember any of her other themes being. Why? Because she can finally eat her snackoos. Perfect. Everyone's happy. It's a happy game. Trust me. There's no sadness anyways. Love it.
Well, there's sadness, but there's also happy tears.
Exactly. Yeah, but let the happy tears erase your sad tears.
I agree with you about this tune. I think it's a very smart piece of music. I have to admit, it is outside of my musical experience in terms of how it's composed. Possibly because I am a music theater nerd, and that's pretty much where my music theory and knowledge begins and ends. However, I think this case specifically must have been really, really fun for the localization team to tackle. Because as we were joking, Eat Your Hamburgers Apollo, this is very much a case that could only take place in Japanifornia.
In Japan, I feel like Rakugo has no real equivalent that could ever really like I think about other games Rhythm Heaven on the Wii specifically had like the Manzai birds in Japanese, but they just did not even bother to put it in the English version. They could not come up with any way to like localize Manzai. I don't know how they were gonna localize Rakugo. Is it like Soulmen noodles that they use? They couldn't even like keep ramen for Maya. I mean, this whole thing was just an exercise in a very, very Japanese style of comedy, and this music is so good for that. It's a lovely, I just love listening to it. Mm-hmm. In general, if there's a time where I want to work and I want to put music on, I'll put this. This is just a great piece, but it fits so well, and it's for this character who is so integral in so many ways to the case. I was really debating between like this and the Mood Matrix music, because the Mood Matrix is how I always feel with all the emotions going off. I'm like, oh boy, time to cry and also scream. But like, I had to go with this one because like, it's so distinct, it's so unique, and it fits a very unique character in a very unique case very, very well.
See, I think that's one of the reasons why this case specifically is so polarizing, is because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the game. It is very much a standalone case in the style of like the earlier Ace Attorney games, where you would have cases and there would be like a few little threads, but for the most part they were standalone stories. And the Spirit of Justice, for the most part, is one case goes into the next case, goes into the next case, telling an overarching story, and then you just have this nice little break where you just you're playing a case just like you would in the original games. It feels very similar to that, and I actually very much enjoyed that. And I agree with you. I think the characters are fascinating in this game. Now, we don't have to worry about spoilers here, because if you're listening to this, if you don't, you can skip ahead about 30 seconds. But the character has dissociative identity disorder, which, to put it multiple personalities, essentially, alters. And from what I have read, now I know almost nothing about this condition, but it sounds like they handled it in a very respectful and in a somewhat authentic way in the game, which is wonderful from a game that, well, had Gene Armstrong, for example. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I mean...
I intentionally called you Nick.
That's
because,
right, it's me. Phoenix Small version. Yeah, I also don't know much about it, but like from a real world perspective, but it makes sense because this is the case where Athena takes over, and because she is a psychologist, it makes sense that they would take that extra effort to make sure that it was handled well, and it's great,
I think the reason you like this is because it's technically a prototype for her own game.
Yes, I mean, there's everything about it. Okay, everyone's gonna hate me for this. Nayuta is one of my favorite prosecutors in the series. I actually love him. He's up there with Black Quill for me. And what did I say? I want to see these two talk to each other. What happened in this case? They talk to each other. What else happens in this case? Black Quill grabs you by the collar and shakes you. That's great. Why? Don't ask me why. I don't have really an answer for that. But yeah, also Athena actually is doing something, which she should be doing because she's Athena. Hello, give her own game. And it's fun. I like seeing these kinds of very unique things. Like, Japanese humor is so distinct. There's nothing else like it in any other culture. And it's so cool to see them actually be like, here is a case that is based off of that. Here is a character that does it well. Uendo has dissociative identity disorder, so all of those personalities have their own names, and one of them is even a woman, and they gender them all correctly. They don't just call him he for all of them, right? Like, they all have their own genders. They are all respected as their own characters. And it's just amazing.
They do a remarkable job of the sprites, too. The way the sprites, go into each other, the different alters.
Oh my god, it's so good. Oh my gosh, the animations are so smooth.
It's really
it's just
clean.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. And the little one, like I said, I already said this, but the way he flaps the fan with the confetti in the air, oh my god, is so good. It's the best. The transitions between the personalities, everything. Oh my gosh. And this song really captures that.
Yeah.
It's just so good. And every day I cry. And that's it. That's how it goes.
What do you think, Patrick?
I'm just honored and thankful to be here because I think sometimes I get so analytical about music, I forget about, here's a fun pun, the spirit of the music and the spirit of justice itself. The theme for Oendo is already a great piece of music, just objectively it is. But when you remember the context and as you would experience it in the game and learning about who this character is and who the characters are within this character, yeah. And I didn't know prior to you bringing this up, Nikki, the bit about the original composition being done on 4 instruments. I took a look back over that myself, and yeah, I do believe that is the case.
There's only 4 instruments ever playing.
Right, at any given time, no more than 4 instruments playing. So it's like, Oendo could actually, in some ways, create that music, at least in their mind, at any given time. And it's attention to detail like that makes this whole game and series so great. I will say about my choice for Emma Sky, first of all, in that 15th anniversary orchestra album, obviously you have so much territory to cover.
Such a good album.
It's great. Frustratingly, they did these big medleys and suites, and they didn't differentiate in the track list what's what. Someone on YouTube took the album and split those suites, which are basically done by game, I think some of them are done by like musical theme across a series, but at least some of them are done just by the game. And so I loved Emma Sky's theme. I mentioned earlier, for those who remember back from the beginning of the episode, that the first soundtrack I ever owned was the Yomigaero Gyakuten, or what is it, Rising from the Ashes?
Rise from the Ashes, yeah.
The Rise from the Ashes bit.
Which is essentially a prototype for Apollo Justice and every game that came after that.
That's correct. Yeah, so it was the soundtrack that I bought was the 27 OST tracks from the first game, plus 7 new tracks from the DS game. And of course, that DS mission introduced a character named Emma Sky, who's a scientist, and there was a functional component for that, which was, we're going to use the DS to let you do some hands-on stuff. I remember you had to like blow away dust using the microphone and everything. And there was all sorts of like nifty little, let's use the gadgetry of the DS itself to do some science-y stuff. And that was sort of the purpose for Emma Sky's existence as a character. But for me, she was just such a lovable character beyond that, that when they brought her back, I was like over the moon. She's one of my favorite characters in the whole series. And so having her own sort of redo of the theme song for Dual Destinies, or not Dual Destinies, for Spirit of Justice, really made me happy. And then having it on the 15th anniversary orchestra album, which is sort of at this point the biggest and most definitive of all the orchestral work they've done. I isolated that from the suite that it was in because it's just such a, it's almost like if you took specifically the B-side from Gumshoe, it's, you know, just that whole uplifting melody kind of stuff. That's what I live for. I mean, yeah, the more like intense driving stuff in an Ace Attorney game, yeah, that music's great too. But what's life-giving to me, at least at this point in my life, is almost certainly when you find something to smile about. And Emma Sky is all that. Even when you're looking at very dark or difficult details, she keeps it on the up and up. So thank you, Emma Sky, and thank you to Iwadare and everyone who works on these games and makes, you know, these beautiful character themes, because I think both of you said, you know, there's this incredible mixture of dark and light throughout the series, and both the darkest moments and the happiest moments are treated with such care. You can take them seriously no matter how absurd the scenario may be. Yeah, and Emma Sky's just a piece of that for me, but she's a very big piece.
I think Emma Sky is a phenomenal character in every game she has appeared in. Rise from the Ashes I know it's the last case of the first Ace Attorney game, but in my mind it almost stands alone as its own game, and obviously it was being developed, if not alongside, at least with Apollo Justice in mind, so they knew where that character was eventually going to go. And I think they crafted a character that they couldn't bring Maya back because they knew where she was going to be going in Justice for All, so they couldn't bring her back for a single case in the timeline. So they needed to create somebody who would fill the role, but they didn't just create someone who would fill the role, they created someone who has certain similarities of character, but has their own point of view and has their own personality and has their own go-get-'em attitude that really, really worked as Phoenix's co-counsel in that game. And then when they introduced her in Apollo Justice as this, like, burnt-out, life has beaten them down, they can't achieve their dream detective who has taken over Gumshoe's job, like, I thought that was just a really, really, really wonderful turn where you wouldn't have expected that optimistic, like, teenage character to go. And then, of course, in the next 2 games, as she gets the job of her dreams and then starts getting the professional respect as a scientist and an investigative scientist that she always wanted, it's a really nice character journey. I'm a big fan of the character. I think it's really cool. And I think this version, I mean, originally this was a variation of Turnabout Sisters.
Correct.
In Rise from the Ashes. And then they took that theme, which was a variation of the Sisters theme, and they turned it into the detective theme. That, you know, that's another reason why I wanted to put this one last, is because it functions in the same role as Gumshoe's did in the first one, which is the first person that you usually see on the scene when you arrive at a crime scene.
It was Emma.
Yeah, and it does a lot of the same things as the first song, but does it in a very different way.
Yeah, she provides a lot. I mean, what you pointed out about her character arc throughout the series, it really, you know, it's almost like, you know, she evolves and gets different roles, and it's almost like well, so does the game, and that's why you keep switching up who's the protagonist. Like, if this series was going to grow, if it was going to work beyond the original trilogy, they had work to do, and it's almost like Emma Skye had to go through that work with them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this particular arrangement of the song, I mean, it has a bit more of a, how do I put this? A bit more of a sciencey, like, technology kind of feel than the other ones, which makes sense because obviously they have considerably better audio tech now than they did back in the days of the DS, but also because she's an adult now.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Nick? I know you mentioned a few. I really wish I came up with the Nick thing earlier in the episode because I really like it. What do you think?
Yeah, it's so much livelier. Like, I was kind of just going through kind of snippets of the original games just to kind of give myself a refresher. And then when I went in to listen to this 2016 one that we have been provided with, it's just so much livelier than I remember her theme originally being. And I'm like, oh, it's because she's happy now. Get it? Wow, thank goodness somebody's happy because I'm crying. But, you know, it is very, like, her character arc's very good. Yeah, the parallels with... It is nice. She has the parallels with Gumshoe, but also with Maya and Mia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very great to see that, yeah, her theme came into its own, just like she grew into her own very distinct character. She's always been distinct, but like we've said, you know, we really got to see her grow up. And I think it's especially noticeable with her because, like, we see, like we talked about, Edgeworth gets the glasses. Oh my gosh, you know, Phoenix becomes a hobo for a few months or whatever. But when you're an adult already, like the changes between the games aren't as drastic because you're already an adult. And I feel like that kind of goes through with their themes. But since Emma was younger than Maya, if I remember correctly, in that case, she was only like 16 and Maya's like 17, and Maya doesn't show up until Spirit of Justice. Like, she takes like those few games in between off. We actually really do see her grow, and I wonder if they're going to do something like that for Trucy in the future, because she's like the only other, and Pearl.
I'd like to see Pearl develop into a larger character.
Agreed.
Again, because she was such an adorable bundle of innocence to pair next. I mean, obviously you could say quite a bit about the morality of trucking a child along with you to crime scenes and in the courtroom, but yeah, I would really like to see where that goes.
Yeah, we know it's possible because of Emma. Science makes anything possible. Thank you, Emma. That is what we have come to understand.
Also, as someone who is in their 30s, I have to admit, Emma Skye in Apollo Justice is the most relatable character, I think, in the entire series right now, where she's just like done with this job and she's just like, I just want a snack.
Yeah, I feel that almost every day.
Yeah, you feel it in your bones. You just want to throw your snack food at people who bug you.
And then the handsome guitarist man takes it from you. Like, no, I was gonna throw it at you. Ugh.
No, they should. A good prosecutor should be simorous, should be furrowed of brow, not glimmerous.
Goodness gracious! Every day.
Well, that is going to be our last song for the episode.
Objection.
We're not quite done yet. There's no need for an objection,
okay.
But we will end with an objection. Normally, I let one of the guests. Well, I don't. Mike or Hillary lets one of the guests pick the bonus song, but because The Great Ace Attorney is being released, I thought we would pick The Great Ace Attorney Suite from the 2019 Ace Attorney Orchestra concert. So I just wanted to give the audience a taste of what The Great Ace Attorney offers in terms of music, aside from the Sherlock Holmes thing. And we're obviously you're gonna listen to it after we're done talking. But just out of curiosity, Patrick, what do you think about this particular suite of music?
I think it really stands out as not just appropriate for trying to do like a time period piece in terms of like what the game is, being, from an older time, but I think the music just sort of stands on its own as both a recognition of what the Ace Attorney series has always been about and appropriate starting over. I love that idea of being able to move forward while going back, which is what happens when you release a new game that takes place 200 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, it uses chamber music, I believe.
Right.
That's the feel they were going for.
Yeah, it fits really well. It makes a ton of sense to do everything they did with the music. And at the same time, even though it's a very different feel than sort of the more upbeat and synthesized Ace Attorney music that we know and love, still feels very much in the realm of the series. So I like what they're doing.
I do too. Nikki, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, it gives those kind of period appropriate vibes, like Leighton versus Wright, with good reason.
It really reminds me of that as well.
And it gives me give me the game right now or else vibes, because I need it. So yeah.
Well, you certainly have that option because it is coming out tomorrow. And well, I guess not tomorrow anymore for people who are listening to this. You may have been played the game already and you may know the music very well. So you're going to be hearing this, and I just want to tell you, now that Rhythm is back, we're back for a few episodes now, and I just want to tease a few episodes that are coming up for us. We have 2 episodes coming up focusing on other series that are known for their amazing music, one for the Nier series and the other for Final Fantasy XIV. Now, every single time I say Final Fantasy XIV, I expect Caitlin to like pop up like a genie and tell us about its free trial. But if you want to hear Caitlin's thoughts about Final Fantasy XIV, you need to check out one of her outstanding patch reviews. She has a couple of them on the site. She releases them as the game is patched, and they are always very comprehensive and unwaveringly, it's an unwavering, intelligent point of view about this incredible game, which I will never play because I'm stubborn. Now, if you can't get enough of my voice and you want to check out many of the other voices you've heard on this podcast, or you just really like talking about current games, you might want to check out RPG Fans' other podcasts. We have the bi-weekly Random Encounter. I co-host that with Greg Delmage. And that's, like I said, where we speak with other RPG fan staff members about what they're currently playing. We have Retro Encounter, hosted by the tireless Mike Solosi, where RPG fan staff will take a deep dive into the RPGs and adventure game of yesteryear. And I think the cutoff is 2 years. And then we have our sister podcast, Phoenix Edge, that's hosted by Hat and Eric, and they talk about all the news that's coming out in the RPG community, and there has been a lot of it this summer. I just want to say, if you have any feedback about this episode, or you have any thoughts for any other Rhythm Encounter episodes, you can feel free to drop us a line at music@rpgfan.com. Do us a favor, rate us on your podcast player of choice. We would really appreciate that, because boy, oh boy, it really helps. And yeah, if you want to talk to me directly, you can find me on Twitter at Jono Logan. And Nikki, tell us, where can we find you?
I'm at thetwitter.com at otomeniki. That's OTOME_NIKI. It's only 1K. If it were 2, that would be a diary.
No, 1K, like Nick. And Patrick, where can we find you?
Objection! You can find me on Twitter as @Gameadactyl. Hold it! You can also find my writings on RPG Fan. Take that! Don't try to find me on any other social media, because I generally don't exist anywhere else. I don't even exist in real life. Just RPG Fan and Twitter.
Well, from all of us here at Rhythm Encounter, we want to thank you for listening, and I hope you will enjoy our bonus track of this episode, the Great Ace Attorney Suite from the 2019 Ace Attorney Orchestra Concert. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Objection!
Does anyone want to make a barnyard animal sound?
My guinea pig says squee, 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 squee. I'm so sorry.